I learned so much from that day, and that's what I'm gonna try to pass on to you today. So let's start. One of the reasons why everybody's sitting here is because somebody back in the early 80s decided that he wanted to have beautiful planted tanks, and it was not in Europe, it was in Japan. This gentleman developed a brand out of passion and showing the world that most of us didn't know about him with a publication of a book, what was possible to do with an aquarium other than just what we knew back then, which was the Dutch aquariums. So I don't know how far back you go, but remember when you opened that first, book, it was just a shock for the world. And I remember I was shopping for dog food at a PetSmart, and they had $1 book pile, and on top of it was Nature Aquarium, and I grabbed it because I'm always been an aquarist and I always grow plants, and I opened it and I was like, what in the world is this? Why is this only $1? I just went ahead and paid for it, right? And I went home and I was flipping and reading all the little details that were, it was published by DFH, right? I think. And I became obsessed about it, and back in those days is when AOL, and you have to wait for the so we used to have the planted aquarium community, we used to have chats, because they were chats. This is before the forums, by the way. Yeah. On CompuServe, and we will start talking about aquatic plants, and then the word of Mr. Mano came up. And we were like, what in the world is that? And soon after, a couple of Americans went to Japan and they made contact with him, and they started bringing in a few, other publications, because they were publishing a magazine. And it just took that small community that it was represented at the time by the Aquatic Garden Association. And that's where I met the CEO of this company like almost 25 years ago. Because he used to attend. Greg and Doug will go there. So finally, enough interest is generated to invite the gentleman to come and present for the first time in North America in 2001. So the AGA convention was held in November. And sadly, as we all know, in 2001, we got attacked by terrorists in September 11th. So we didn't know if this was going to happen or not. Everybody was on their toes. We didn't know what was happening. We still had no response from the government. Flying was, you don't want to know. It was sad, what we went through that year. So finally they say, okay, it's happening, and it will take place at the Chattanooga Aquarium in Tennessee. So I bought my ticket, I rented a car, and there was no direct flights to Chattanooga, so I have to go to Nashville, Tennessee, and drive to the time zone change and everything. And we were all there, and all 16 of us, and and suddenly there he was, Mr. Mano. We were like, oh my God. And he showed with a little suitcase with 3 tools and a small bag of aqua soil, because it was the thing. It was the beginning of the aqua soils, and he put a tank about this size with bits and pieces, because again, we didn't have anything. You guys are so privileged. You have everything that you need to create amazing stuff. We used to go to swamps, go to the deserts looking for stuff, collecting on landscaping supply companies, and we'll bring Mirati cats in and start testing the rocks, and it was a different time. So we got to see this gentleman working and just being creative. And I think that's the reason why we're all sitting here and everywhere else in the world, because it just developed a community that it just became really strong. And now we know each other, even if you live in Australia, here. I mean, we have done presentations in Mexico, in Colombia, in Brazil, in Argentina, in Dubai, you name it. I mean, it's a global thing. So I think that's amazing on its own. And it's actually what keeps me motivated, because I learned so much from that day. And that's what I'm gonna try to pass on to you today. So let's start. 3-foot. You and I were playing with 3-foot earlier. The rocks got the same. You can actually pick up a piece of wood and say, okay, that doesn't look too good, right? It looks like a sailboat or something like that. You rotate it. Oh, well, that looks different, right? Well, if I tilt it, maybe it doesn't look too natural, but it looks better. But if I put it like this and I angle it correctly, that looks better, right? So always look under the light, because you will know where the shades and the shapes are coming. So this is going to be my left side. One of the things that I learned from the master, I guess, he used to say that rocks shrink underwater. So when you put things inside the aquariums, they may look big to you, but once you fill them up with water, it completely changes. So don't be afraid to use big pieces. This is going to be the main piece. Who can give me a hand? Just hold it in place so it doesn't slide off. Just going to take a quick look. Very important when you work with wood, you have two options. There is many types, and some of them waterlog very fast, some others take forever. Some of them will leach tons of tannins. Purion will actually help you maintain the water clear when that problem happens. It's beautiful to have tannins in the water, but unfortunately when we are working with a planted aquarium, the last thing you need is to have tannins, because you need the water to penetrate and reach all the plants so they can grow evenly. All right, so I know this piece is not going to float because it's like, I don't know, 12 kgs or something like that. This one, on the other hand, is super light. So what we're doing today, never do it at home, ever. And this is the reason why. When you get into aquascaping, especially if you're thinking about competing, is an investment. You know how much this costs. I don't need to tell you. You know how much the light is, you know how much the CO2 system is, you know how much the substrate is. So if you really want to get serious, the last thing you want is to set up a tank in one day. Don't ever do that. If you're competing, get what you need. First things first. Aquarium stand, light, CO2 system, substrates and everything. Then come get your material. Everything that I'm using today is from Horizon. And I pre-designed these in the back of my head just by using the dojo in the back. There's a ruler that tells you depths and lengths, and that way you can actually use and buy what you actually need. Then and only then, when you are done with the investment of the hardware, the Hardscape, which actually you can work on and on and on and on for days or weeks if need be. And then and only then, start thinking about plants. So break it into three. Like if you do everything in one day, it's just flat out crazy. And you're gonna be tired, you're gonna be frustrated at the end of the day, and it's gonna like, you're gonna start just planting for planting. You're gonna lose that focus that you need. Now I get to travel, I get gadgets from all over the world. This is from Colombia, by the way. And it's a cyanocrylate accelerator. I got this from my friend Johnny Vanegas. I don't know if you follow him, but he's a really good aquascaper from Colombia. And it's really cool because it actually sets the very thick cyanoacrylate, like in this case Reef glue, into a very solid form really quickly, and it remains clear. It's not like when you add water that gets white. Yeah, so it's really cool. And you don't have to stuff it with a bunch of paper or anything like that. So on the front, where it really doesn't make much of a difference, I use this instead of using paper.
So you were talking about the fertilizers.
Yes.
And I was just wondering, am I missing like a complete fertilizer with NP and K?
There's a way we approach, like our comprehensive would be our flourish, and there's potassium here. So you're going to have a full range of your micros, organic acids, vitamins, and the iron. And the way we approach it at Seachem, we have nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium separate. Now, the way we do that, because if we didn't, we can very easily do an all-in-one NPK in a fixed ratio.
Yeah.
But every single aquarium we see here has a different uptake based on species load or bioload, or amount of the species. So it'd be very non-ideal in a fixed ratio to do it one. So that's why we offer this separate. Okay. Most people are going to be looking at the potassiums. And then if you don't have fish or anything that's reintroducing your nitrogenous waste or ash or phosphorus, then you'd move to the nitrogen phosphorus. So we have it in a way and it's actually easy used as recommended on the dose on the bottle. It's actually quite easy. Whereas I know a lot of people like the easy feeling that if it's all in one, that's easy, I don't have to think. Well, that's great, but if we put it in a fixed ratio, we can line up 100 aquariums and maybe one or two would actually benefit from that ratio that we could fix in a formula. So we definitely do it. We don't do 3 different bottles just to take up more space on the shelf. We avoid that when possible, but that's why we do keep it separate at Seachem. It's more on the biology and the science side. So anyway, that's a good question. Thank you.
And also, if I may, when you have an all-in-one situation, which is great. Actually, if you feel comfortable using it, you can carry on. But sooner than later, if you develop a deficiency, especially if it's a deficiency that is related to macroelements, and say that your phosphorus is off, right? And it's consuming it so fast that when you conduct your testings, maybe every other day, you will notice that it's declining and declining and declining, therefore is off balance. If you add more of that all in one, you're going to create a bigger mess.
And your ratio just goes up.
Yeah, so here's where you can actually just get, okay, his phosphorus, I just get phosphorus and I add it and I adjust it and I'm done. Rather than I'm going to squirt 17 times to compensate for that, but you're going to throw off the rest of them. Why? Because they don't mix together.
Yeah, and a fixed ratio.
In order for me not to use a very high amount of aqua soil, I'm using a lava-based layer to create some height and to reduce also the heaviness of the aquarium, and actually it helps you circulate water quite well, because once the root reaches down there, it will continually move water. I also do the same technique that I do in the foreground and the background when possible. Especially after trimmings, I will keep on injecting pristine. So remember, you're not doing this for fertilization purposes. You're doing this in order for you to maintain a better bacterial population in your substrate, which is very important, and the reason why we'll do something next. And you're familiar with it because other companies also use the same, just ours is slightly different. When Mr. Hermano was in America for the first time, he actually used Onyx N. because he only brought one bag of his soil. It was brand new, and he only had the powder form, and we gave him the option because Seachem sponsored that convention, and he saw the fluoride, and then he saw the onyx sand. He said, no, I'll go with the onyx sand because of the color, and he used that as a base layer. He capped it with the aqua soil, and he put together a beautiful tank. And I need to find the picture of that so I can send it to you guys. He was very frustrated because he could not find any wood of his liking, so he walked inside the Chattanooga Aquarium and out until he finally spotted a piece of wood that was like on one of the large exhibits, and they made a diver go fetch it out so he could use it for the aquascape.
Out of curiosity, how many bags of what size do you think you're going to get through to populate that aquarium?
For instance, if you have a 60p, you can do 8 kgs of these. That will be your standard, and add 4 for every, what would that be, 30 liters and up. So again, you use the lava and we're saving half of it, and it works all the same. All right, so regarding the composition, it's very simple. This is as easy as it gets. One of the easiest techniques when it comes to nature aquarium is to use the ratio 2:1, which means that if you have a rectangular shape, you divide it in thirds, and you will create one side of the center bigger than the opposite. And you're gonna create a negative space, which will usually be your focal point. If you put anything that's center, it becomes boring and too symmetric, and it's no longer beautiful. In this case, it's a concave shape, and my negative space is going to be here. So I'm going to have some tall plants coming up here. I'm going to try to have a decent amount of cryptocorynes, the ones that I know that they will get slightly taller. We're going to do heavy planting on the wood to highlight this structure, and also to light it up a little bit because it's pretty bulky, as you can see, and a well-defined foreground. So we're going to go foreground, middle ground, background, and let's start. And as you notice, I'm planting dry, and the only reason I'm doing this, unlike other people who really likes to damp the substrate, is because I can pull in and out the tweezers, and it's a lot more gentle for the plants as well. So this little plant is it's actually a fern. I don't know if you knew that. It's very cute. It requires very low maintenance. It's on the medium type of growth.
Luis,
Sir.
you have quite a big slope towards the back with the aqua soil.
Mm-hmm.
Are you not afraid that it's going to start rolling forward?
No, not really. You will see why, because we're going to plant very heavily. And when I flood the aquariums, I'm usually very careful of, keeping the first week a close eye on it. Once the plants start rooting, you will hold it in place. Leave it alone. The only thing you have to do at the beginning is change water. I don't even wipe the glass. I just change water, and I look at my water chemistry, my water temperature, and I make sure that my filter is on the best. 24 Celsius is my temperature of choice. I do a photo period of 6 hours a day for the first 3 weeks, then I bring it up to 7 for another 3, and then I bring it up to 8, and I stay there. Oxygenated water at night. I usually just use the lily pipes. I rise them and create turbulence. If you have a surface skimmer, you should be fine. You will see a huge difference. Mr. Armando used to emphasize that a lot. He really liked to agitate the water at night because, well, the plants are no longer photosynthesizing, therefore they're breathing oxygen. And you have not only plants, you have the bacteria, you have the fish. So just keep that in mind. You want to oxygenate the tanks at night.
Hands together for Mark.
He's part of the team, so. All right, so I have Parva, and this one is a very slow, cute cryptocorin that the longevity of the leaves is probably much longer than any other, so you have to keep an eye on them, because like many anubias or bucephalandras, when you feel like, okay, the plant is doing good, you just neglect it, and then you start seeing spot algae growing, not because you're doing something wrong, it's because they're all leaves and they need to be trimmed. You have to keep your plants healthy by trimming them, because trimming promotes new growth. So any plant that you know that is a slow grower, keep an eye on it. Whenever you see a change of color or like beginning to have a sign of a deficiency and the rest of the plant is looking great, clip that off, move on to the next.
Just noticed you there, you were taking some of the root off the plant. Do you always do that?
Yes.
Is there a particular reason for it, or?
Make it fit.
Ah.
So, important, when it comes to epiphytic plants, look at your rhizomes, not so much the ferns don't really matter. Anubias, buces, even though it's not an epiphytic plant, I'm going to treat it as one. Look at the direction of the rhizome. If you have Anubias petite, Anubias pangolino, or anything like that, and you plant it with the rhizome facing towards the hardscape, it's not going to look good. The plants follow the light, so it's going to try to make its way to the light. If you put him facing towards the foreground, the plant's going to grow that way. Because where is the light? It's always on the front. The little light available will always be on the front, because everything in the back will be covered by mass growth, and it's not going to do what the plants want, so they're going to follow to the front. So just remember, guide the rhizomes in any possible way to the angles to the front, so that manner. So the idea of this tank is to be very lush, foresty-like, and it's going to last for as long as possible. So when I make it back again, I still get to see it.
I see you're not being shy with the glue. Do you not think it never has a negative impact on the plants? No?
Oh, you should see me at home. Did you ever, anybody here got to see Mr. Felipe Oliveira work? He was fast, man. I miss him so much. He was a good friend of mine. He was probably the fastest aquascaper I've met in my life. He will put a tank like this together in probably like 45 minutes flat, man. And he'll talk and be funny. Like he was everything that I won't ever be, he was. He knew that I was really nervous about working for Seachem because I'm not very open. I'm usually like really quiet, and I'm not very good at making friends. And he will tell me, no. Stop that BS. This is what we're gonna do. And he will always say, this is what we're gonna do. So I have nothing but gratitude to Philippe, because he will actually look at my presentations and say, okay, we need to work on this, we need to work on that. You have too much brains and little passions, and bring up the passion, and easy up on the nerd stuff, man. So nice gap in between them, about 2 inches, just to make sure that they get enough water circulation. which is very important in a planted aquarium, and the reason why you see lily pipes on the side. Mr. MJ was asking me earlier, is like, are you concerned about the plants, you know, or the soil collapsing? Well, when I float the tanks, the last thing you want to be doing is replanting because something will start floating. So when you put them leaning towards the front and you float the tank, they will naturally rise. And you don't have to be poking around the tank. You just leave it be for 10 days and then the plants will hold the substrate just fine because root will start spreading. So this is Eleucaro montevidensis. It's a cosmopolitan plant. You find it in many places in the world. I guess they found it in Uruguay, that's why they named it montevidensis, but it's all over the place. This I've seen even in Texas and North Mexico. And it grows under horrible conditions too. This plant is very, very resilient and it will stick out of the water this much. And it runs like for the hills. You see the rhizomes just running everywhere. So this is a miniature version of it. This is gonna get really tall. So I'm gonna put it back here, Nymphea type 1, because it gets really nice and really lush. And I kind of want to have it there. And I'm gonna surround it with cryptocorynes. Well, it may not win a contest, but if you keep this properly, it will look very nice and it will last for a long, long time. It was a pleasure. Thank you. And I think this tank is done.